I'm Andre the Beast, and welcome to the Andre the Beast Show. Today, we have two extraordinary gentlemen that are going to share with us their journey into beast mode. What exactly is beast mode, you might ask yourself? Beast mode is when you do things when other people say that you can't do things. Beast mode is setting a state of mind. When negativity comes in, you bring positivity in. Today on the show, we have attorney Paul Jefferson and David Benz, two very high-profile attorneys that are going to share with us their journey out of beast mode and how they got back into beast mode. We're going to start out with one of the most, what I thought was impelling stories. As we was going through this, trying to get ready, was we're going to start with Paul. And Paul has a very interesting and impacting story that he wants to share with us. Go ahead, Paul. Tell us what's going on.
Sure. Gosh, I got lots of stories I could share, but the one I think I will is, you know, in terms of my career, I started law school in '99. I was out for a little while. I got in on the waiting list because I didn't let school get in the way of my education very much in undergrad. And I got my first semester grades, and I was, scared shitless. First semester, you're in on the waiting list, and I got all A's for the first time in my life, and had lunch with my mom at El Sol down on Washington Street, and I'm like, Mom, I got straight A's, and she looked like she wanted to buy me a lollipop or something like you do for a young kid. And I started explaining to her what that means in law school, and what that means in law school is all these jobs open up, law review, all these other things that otherwise wouldn't happen, and money that our family at least had never seen. And she just looked at me and she said, don't you become one of those ostentatious lawyers. And so I then went to work at a great firm and proceeded to become exactly that. I, had a nice watch, nice cars, nice clothes, great career, a lot of accolades, and ended up going to work for a client of mine. And all of that kind of came to a crashing halt when that client of mine had started embezzling money and changing the accounts receivable, and ended up serving a stint in federal prison that he just was released from. So in the course of all of that, I got to reacquaint myself with what I did and didn't want to be. And, I'm a proud father of 3 kids. I'm now single. But I really got to learn what my mom's advice was and how it played out in my life. And I'm happy to be where I am now.
Sounds like a winner here. David, share us the path that you of least resistance that happened to you.
So I want to say it's entirely indifferent from what Paul shared. It's sort of, I guess, it kind of bird dogs with what you were talking about. I've had a mantra that I've applied to my career. I guess I've applied it to my life overall. And it was very fortunately, I learned it very early on in my career. I did not get straight A's my first semester. I came into law school. I actually came into law school. So to show my academic prowess, I came into law school. I had graduated with a degree in biochemistry, actually, with a 3.97 in 2.5 years.
For those listening at home, that meant he went to go to med school.
Yeah, that's right. I wanted to be a scientist. Seriously, I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to wear one of those white coats and like work in a hood with pipettes and all that kind of crap. I ended up taking a job with the State Department of all places in Washington, and I failed miserably. Absolutely crashed and burned. It was horrible. I had an older brother who was a lawyer, so I sort of went running back to law school because it was the path of least resistance. Didn't get the straight A's that Paul got his first semester, but nonetheless, I was extremely fortunate to have my career out of law school, or once I graduated from law school. I was extremely fortunate to hook up with, sort of hitch my wagon, if you will, to a guy who was a national leader with the firm that I was with, incredibly well respected. There were 3 of us that essentially worked for him most of the time. And it all started, or at least the success that I've enjoyed, all started one day over, of all things, a parking spot.
A parking spot.
A parking spot.
You got to share that with us right now.
So one of the guys that I worked with, one of these three, we were referred to as Charlie's Angels. The guys that we worked for his name was Charlie, and so everybody referred to us as Charlie's Angels. This guy, he had a parking spot that was right next to the exit ramp. So at the end of the day, he could just get in his car, back up a skosh, and immediately head out the exit ramp. I, on the other hand, was like 3 or 4 spots on the other side of the parking ramp. So I had to back up, go up a whole nother level, then go back, catch the next exit ramp to go back down.
Okay.
Now, it added maybe 2 minutes to my day. The question that everybody always asks me is, why the hell didn't you just back up a little bit further? And I'm like, because I follow the rules. I follow the rules. So his spot comes open. I go to whoever you go to talk about parking spots, I guess HR or something like that. And I said, hey, I want that fellow's parking spot. And they said, no, it's already been given away. And besides which, you have a parking spot already. I said, well, who's it been given to? Like it matters.
Right.
The new intern. Well, it's me. I'm one of Charlie's Angels. I deserve that spot.
Okay, no, Charlie.
like the speaker box. You remember the speaker box? They're like, no. That's not how it works. It's a lottery, and your name wasn't even in the lottery because you already have a spot. And I said, no. It's you who doesn't understand. I deserve that spot. I said, well, why don't you go take it up to Charlie? So that's what I'm going to do. So I marched down the hallway, knock on Charlie's door. Said, hey, you got a second? He said, sure, come on in. Now, a little bit of background. Charlie never called me David because there was already a David on his team. So I was the second David. I was the new David. So he always called me by my last name. I go into his office. I share with him the same story that I just shared with you about the whole parking spot and all that kind of stuff. And he did 2 things that I will remember for the rest of my life. Number 1, he called me David. He said, David, have a seat. Got my attention with that, but then what he did next was he reached underneath his desk and he pressed this button and it made the door close on his office. I thought, oh my God, what have I done?
I want one of those one day.
I know.
To do what?
Close the door in my office.
You're thinking that this story turns into Matt Lauer, but it doesn't. It doesn't.
MacGyver, more or less.
So he says, I'm going to give you some advice, and if you listen to my advice, you're going to have a phenomenal career. If you don't listen to my advice, then good luck and God bless, because you're really going to need it. I should interrupt myself and add an epilogue here. I have since talked to Charlie. Charlie and I left each other's company, I don't know, 2000, something like that. I moved out to Los Angeles and left his group. But I stayed in touch with him over the years, and he does not recall this story. Really? That's how insignificant it was to him. And I don't mean to say that he didn't believe what he told me. It's just that I'm sure this is how he lived his life, and it was so important to him that sharing it with somebody else just didn't rank high on his to-do list. But at any rate, he said, I'm going to give you some advice, and if you follow this advice, then you're going to have a fantastic career. At this point, he definitely had my attention. He said, when you get here in the morning, you should have one goal in mind and one goal only, and that's to have one client, not 2, not 3, not 4, just one client. Go home at the end of the day and say, thank God David Benz was there for me today. I don't know what I would have done without him. That's it.
That's powerful. When you shared that with him, the impact that that particular moment did to you, did he re-channel anything?
Oh, absolutely. Because everything that he said was making sense. Everything that he said was making sense. And look, I would love to be able to sit here and say, every morning I get to work, I focus on who that client is going to be. He made a point. He said, look, figuring out what to do to make that client go home, that's probably going to be the easy part.
Right.
The difficult part is going to be identifying who the client is, because sometimes the client is obvious. Sometimes it's the person that we send an invoice to who pays our invoice. Other days, it might be Paul. Other days, it might be the guy in IT who's just having a really horrible day, and the last thing he needs is somebody coming into his office going, I can't figure out how to turn on my laptop today. Whatever. Figure out who the client is, and then set about your way, making sure that that person goes home and says, thank God David was there for me today. And like I said, I wish I could say that every morning that I got to the office or that I went to work, that I did that. I don't. But it has had a remarkable impact on my career. And it seems like when I do make it my focus, when I make that my focus, everything goes right. Everything falls into place. I don't worry about parking spots anymore. I don't worry about, you know, whether I would make partner or not make partner. I've had an amazing career, and I have been so, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. You know what? Some people, if you're a fatalist, you'd call it luck. If you're a cynic, you might call it privilege. I don't know. I call it God's grace. I've had an amazing, amazing career, and I've got to learn from just extraordinary, extraordinary people. And I shouldn't limit it to just my career. It goes well beyond my career. It's you know, I mean, learning from you. It's getting the opportunity to learn from truly, truly amazing people, and then taking that knowledge and utilizing it to have somebody else go home at the end of the day and say, you know, boy, thank God David was there for me today.
But isn't that the point? Like, the point is we all get to be Charlie, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
In what way? In what way?
We all get to just say and interact with people in ways that are insignificant to us but can change someone's life. And that's you know, as a lawyer, but also as a father and a friend and just a human being, you get those chances all the time. And it's recognizing that those interactions are profound as you go throughout your day that really makes life that way. Because you leave things in your wake.
I like what you said when we first met, and when we was getting ready to try to get the podcast off the ground, and I was, you know, I have my weaknesses. I'm not perfect, and I remember asking myself, what exactly is Beast? And I remember reaching out to you, and I said, hey, you know, because you was a lawyer, and I worried about legal ramifications coming back on me, but I said, how do we...
He did not pay for legal advice, by the way. So.
Shh, keep that quiet. And I remember asking him, you know, what exactly is Beast? I know what Beast is to me and how to channel it, how to instill it in other people. But I didn't know how to put the words in. I thought what you said when you wrote, I don't know if you still remember it, and you wrote it to me. And if you can remember, please share that, because I thought that was so powerful the way you put it.
Well, I remember the gist of it, and it's that, you know, when you're taken over by just having to act and react to situations where you don't have the opportunity to think, it's your flight or fight. You know, how do you do that? And what have you done in your life to get to the point where you're proud of that response? And you know, it's really not about thinking, it's more about doing, but it builds on what you've been and who you are.
Do you really think a lot of people, how can I put this? They just live their life going through things. They really don't understand the concept of being a beast or taking that next step. In other words, are they just comfortable? Are we in a society right now where people are just really comfortable being who they are?
I think a lot of people are boiled frogs. That's what I refer to them as. I don't know if you know how you cook frogs, right. But you put them in a cold pot and you slowly turn the heat
wait
up.
A minute. Frogs?
Yeah, frogs.
Taste like chicken?
That's what I hear. But if you put them in a hot pot, they'll just jump out, right? Okay. So you got to put them in a cold pot and turn the heat up slowly, so that they'll stay in, and then eventually you can cook them. And I think a lot of people are in situations in their life where they probably don't like it, but incrementally over time they've not paid attention and done the things they need to do, so they're stuck where they are.
I mean, because you walked away from 7 figures. I mean, most people would say, you're fucking crazy. You know, 7 figures, you can set yourself for life. But you saw something more than just money. Was it that you had a gap? Was you had a gap somewhere?
Dre. So literally this morning, and
before the workout or after the workout?
Before the workout.
Okay.
Before the workout. As I was slowly getting out of bed, I might add, because I was still a little sore from yesterday's workout. As I was slowly getting out of bed, my wife said, "Did you take before pictures?" I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "Because the change is remarkable. It's amazing." How many weeks has it been?
You know what? I think we're in the fourth week, right?
We're in the fourth week.
We're
in the 4th week. So there's an example. Today, I'm going to go home and I'm going to say, boy, thank God Dre was there for me this morning, right?
Look, don't get emotional now.
No, but I'm catching on what Paul had said, and it's like, Yeah, I mean, you go about your life and you don't realize the impact that you're having on people, but you really are having that impact on people. And I think if we consciously tried to have that impact on people, I mean, look, I don't want to make this, my intent is not to make this philosophical or at all, or to
Hey, didn't you go to school for that?
Errors. No, I didn't.
You went to school for the philosophical department, so you need to address that part. Because I want to go there.
But wouldn't you agree that if people consciously tried to do that, if they set about their way to do that, as opposed to being your boiled frog,
right?
If you set about your way doing that, maybe the world might be a little bit better place.
I mean, everything we're talking about here involves intention and being available and present in what you're doing. And if you live life, and everybody I know who lives life intentionally is happy. Everybody I know who doesn't is miserable.
Boy, that's a great way of putting it. That's a fantastic way of putting it.
I just can't never understand why people will allow themselves to do that, to just be content and not what I might call play it forward. And naturally, you guys have played it forward with your actions. You talked about the change that you saw. Now, Dave, you've been around some of the best trainers, from Charles Glass all the way down. What did you notice that was different in your approach now to coming into the gym and changing just that part of your health regimen?
So, at least physically speaking, my journey has been an interesting one, because for most of my life I have been a very, I won't say tiny person, because I've always been tall. My son best represents me. My son, I think, is 6'4" now and maybe 135 pounds, somewhere in that neighborhood. Mm-hmm. He's got like a 28-inch waist.
Wow.
It's bizarre.
His waist is shorter than his inseam. Someday I hope to be in that club. Andre, get on it. Fix it for me.
No, but so was I. And then at some point I hit square, where the inseam was equal to the waist, and I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble now. Now I'm at square. And then it just got worse. And so, at any rate, so I sort of got into the weightlifting and physique and bodybuilding and all that kind of relatively late in life. I did. Mm-hmm. What I discovered was, as great as my career had been, and again, it was primarily because I was lucky enough to be associated with some phenomenal people. When you, I think the Romans, I don't remember the Latin. Sans corpus, sans mensa, or something like that. It's sound mind and a sound body. Yeah. When you really start to live that, you get treated differently. You really do. You really do. And maybe it's because it's the way that you carry yourself and that you project yourself and all that. And I wish I could blame the coronavirus. I can't. Because trust me, I didn't gain like 40, 50 pounds during the coronavirus.
A lot of people did.
It started before that, but it's probably been since 2000. Gosh, I would say 2000, easily 2015, 2016, since I was diligent about getting back into the gym. I would say that I've been diligent. I think we've all been pretty diligent every single day. And I'm treating myself differently. If nothing else, I'm treating myself differently. Regardless of what response I get from other people in my life, I am treating myself differently in the past 4 weeks since I've been working out every morning with you. I'm treating myself differently.
Paul, what are you treating yourself with?
I just am trying to save myself from myself most days, but trying to just put one foot in front of the other and be there in a way that I can be, instead of worrying about the next thing. Or it's funny, because in our job, I'm supposed to figure out, here are the array of circumstances that exist and the array of possible conclusions, and these are the ones that are acceptable and these are the ones that aren't. And my job is to steer everything towards the acceptable outcome. And I'm good at my job because that's how I've lived my life, except I've learned recently that that's not how I'm supposed to live it, because that's the exact opposite of intentionality. And so, what I'm just trying to do is put one foot in front of the other and do what I can do in any given day. And I've been able to do that for the last 6 weeks in particular, and I found more peace in that than I have at any time in my life. So,
based on what you just said, I thought it was very good. You both are lawyers, and you said you had to deal with two different perspectives on how you approach the client. based on what we're dealing with today. The world is crazy. We got corona, we got health issues, we got racial tension. From a legal standpoint, not even legal, from your standpoint, you and Dave's, what's the best way, as far as what you know, that you would put these categories in the right, and put the pieces to the puzzle together to stop or to draw a somewhat conclusion to what's going on?
I think the laws of physics kind of apply to life. And
I know that. And
so when you a body in motion stays in motion, and for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. As I get older, as I think a lot of people do, you look back in life and you see these forces that keep pushing against one another, and what happens is it becomes a tug of war that no one ever wins. And I think the solution to a lot of these issues is to focus on our commonalities, and to focus, I don't mean ignore things that have happened, and I don't mean, we don't have a history. We clearly do. But pushing back one way or the other is just going to cause more conflict. Actually embracing the similarities and being engaged in an empathetic way and trying to understand as opposed to be understood, I think it's really the only path forward. And until we are able to do that as a country and as a society and as races and otherwise, we don't now, in my view, live in a country where I want to switch places with you, because frankly, I wouldn't want your life. I wouldn't want to be followed around in a store. I wouldn't, you drive a better car than me, but, it's not like I get pulled over because I'm, my awesome Toyota Highlander. So, until we live in that world, we've got to kind of embrace what we have together. And that's where I see us falling short a little bit.
What do you think, Dave?
I think the end result is very similar to what Paul just said. My approach is a little bit different, and my approach is just clearly I'm not as smart as Paul if he got straight A's the first semester.
Just one semester. I'd love to tell you it was the whole time, but it wasn't.
No, I revert back to what's worked for me, which is the whole idea of having somebody go home at the end of the day saying, thank God David Benz was there for me today. Maybe it's Paul, maybe it's you, maybe it's one of the listeners out there. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to actively, I don't want to be that boiled frog. I don't want to just mindlessly exist through life. I'm going to actively try to make sure that somebody goes home. And all the points that Paul raises are extremely valid points. Extremely valid points. I got one of two choices. I can either be closed-minded and say, well, that's just not true. That's simply, take these things, the masks, okay? I've seen scientific studies that say that they help, and I've seen scientific studies that say that they don't help. I can get entrenched in one side and just say, forget it, okay? I can be empathetic, and I can try to understand other people. That's really, really complicated as far as my brain goes. Mm-hmm. For me, I just want that one person to go home and say, boy, thank God David Benz listened to me. That really made me feel valid. That made me feel like my viewpoint was worthy. Hmm. If I do that, then I think the world becomes a better place.
I'm gonna ask you a question. I met with your wife, and she's a lawyer. But
yes.
I don't know if she minds me sharing it, but I'm gonna let you share it. That way I don't have any legal ramifications coming back on me.
I think they're more practical in this instance.
So share with me a little bit about her journey, because I mean you shared a little bit with me, and it's funny, like Paul was just saying, if we learn to at least walk in somebody else's shoes or listen to them, be willing to listen, you'll find people have some very interesting stories to share, and how they came out of the lowest point to get to where she is. And she's a lawyer, right?
Yeah. So I don't want to speak for her. It seems like I get in trouble when I try to speak for her. But if she wasn't my wife, I would still say she's the most remarkable person I've ever met. And the fact that she stands behind me and supports me and lets me do the stupid stuff that I do from time to time.
And what stupid stuff is that?
What?
You got to share it now.
Well, hey, look, it's past 12. It usually relates to this, which is water, by the way. I'm staying hydrated. Okay. but it might be water that kind of tastes like vodka, maybe.
Okay.
But no. She happens to be very empathetic. She happens to be very understanding. Her road to where she is at life was very, very different than mine. And that's not to say you and I have kind of talked about this independently, and I hate saying that I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, because obviously it has such a negative connotation. But I will admit,
you grew up in Carmel.
I did grow up in Carmel. I had two parents that loved me no matter what. There were no conditions placed on it. There are no conditions placed on it. They just, I know that no matter what I do, no matter how bad I screw up, I'm still going to have those two parents that love me, and I think that more than anything had a bearing on what my outcome was going to be. And it's not to say that she didn't have parents that loved her. She did have parents that loved her, but they did not have, as a family, they did not have the financial wherewithal to. I don't want to go too much further because I don't want to embarrass her. But where she is today versus where she was or where she came from, just really, you couldn't get, you literally could not get a more stark comparison between, nothing and where she is today, less than nothing and where she is today. And she truly is just such an amazing, remarkable person, and has taught me. I thought I was the smart one and I knew more than. Turns out knowledge is, it's more the insight that's valuable than sort of the knowledge of facts and information and whatnot. But it really is, and I can't say enough. But for her, I wouldn't have. I don't think intellectually, spiritually, in terms of success, I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am today without her guidance. I don't know if that's where you wanted me to go with that, but that's the reality.
She shared her story, and I thought it was like, I told you, it was like, wow, I can't believe what I'm hearing, and I just was like, just completely blown away. And it's like she's still in beast mode, still moving forward, still doing projects and stuff. Paul, I met your son.
Yeah, my youngest.
The apple of your eye.
One of them. Yep. Yeah, Luke.
Yeah, Luke is real proud of you. What do you think you have done? You've done something to him. What did you do? Because he's like,
honestly, I feel like he's done more to me than I've done for him. But being a dad is just something I always wanted to be when I was growing up, and the fact that I get to be one is amazing. And Luke, my youngest, he's the one who was born without any fucks to give, and he's kind of lived his life that way, and he's made it 10 years. And if anybody tries to steal that shine from him, they're going to have to go through me. But so yeah, he's a unique one. They all are, but yeah.
If you guys had to tell me a memory that you have, whether it's family, whether it's a coworker, that you've done something so extraordinary, and to you it might have been on a lower scale, but like we just talked about, that one gesture impacted somebody so much that it's still affecting them to this day.
Nothing.
Think again.
No. I do mean, and I'm not being. I don't think I'm being. I don't know what's the right word, coy or false modesty. I am. You're getting me to admit this on a live podcast here.
That's the whole idea.
I have been a taker. I hope that as I live out the rest of my life, that I'm a giver. But up to this point, I can't help but to be a taker because like I said, I call it God's will. I've been so incredibly fortunate to be surrounded, and it's like every time I turn around, again, you and I have had this conversation. Dre, you are never going to tell me anything that I say, no, Dre, that's absolutely wrong. because I learn from everybody. I absolutely learn from everybody. Just yesterday, were we not talking about an exercise where I'm like, holy crap, you made that better?
Yeah.
That was an exercise that I was taught by
Charles Glass.
by you know, the godfather of bodybuilding, and yet you made it work in an area that I had never felt it before, and that's one that I'm going to take home and I'm going to pocket. So to answer your question, have I ever had that kind of impact on somebody else? Boy, not that I can think of. I hope that I do at some point, but at this point, it's like, wow, like.
What about you, Paul?
I don't walk under ladders or anything like that because.
So I think, David, you probably have. You just haven't seen it. You know, one moment stands out for me. It was summer of '89.
That was a good year.
And I was sitting at home. And
you were listening to a Bryan Adams song?
I was. Anyway, I come home and my mom comes home early from work. She worked the evening shift at the hospital, and she's like, you got to get your friend to leave. And she tells me that my sister, who was 15 at the time, was pregnant. And she also tells me that my sister had called her and told her she didn't want to see me because she was worried about what I would have to say. And my sister's room was in the basement of our house, and I went downstairs and I just sat on the floor and I told her I was there. And I waited there. I don't remember if it was 10 minutes or 2 hours. It wasn't 2 hours, but when she came out, I just held her and told her that I loved her. And my sister's been my best friend since then. So that was a long time ago. Her son actually lives in LA, and I think he won an Emmy recently, and I've met him. She gave him up for adoption. But you know, when you start to learn the power of those single actions and those choices that you make, you don't really have to do anything profound. You just have to be there and be open. And you know, that was an experience that frankly changed my life and how I live it. So.
Speechless.
That's rare, by the way, for those of you listening at home.
Yeah, it's very rare because I'm like sucking it in. The power that
when there is a moment like that, he usually just says, "Wait a minute more."
I kind of didn't want to interrupt it because it just doesn't ever happen, but you know, whatever.
Wait a minute. My mind is like, wow, like spinning. And you're right. It's unusual for me not to say nothing because I would be like, okay, another set, another rep. But it's just really amazing how we all have come together and able to impact each other's lives to some degree, or play it forward and remain in that state of mind of beast mode and representing what that is. And you two are definitely the clear indication of that. I am privileged to have met you guys, to be a part of your life. I'm blessed that I was able to impact it to a degree. I'm blessed that you guys have also impacted and blessed everybody else with your story and sharing it with us, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot more stories. I would strongly suggest that they follow you guys on the social media platform and watch your journey health-wise, because naturally we're trying to stay healthy through this coronavirus. And now's the time that we as people, our word and our platform basically can change, even if it's just one person's way of thinking, and you guys have allowed that today. I want to thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for having us.
And we'll do it again.
All right, thanks.
Great.